Lopes fans, welcome in. My name is Brennan Williams, and this is Go Lopes Radio. It is officially Mountain West Week here, and we are really excited to get it underway. If you haven't already, please make sure you like and subscribe wherever you prefer to watch or listen. Again, a lot of good content coming your way this week. Now, why Mountain West Week? If you are a GCU fan, you are accustomed to everything in the WAC. Since GCU joined Division I athletics, that has been their home. But that all changed this summer when GCU accepted an early invitation into the Mountain West Conference. So we sat down, we did the research, we watched the film, and again, we put together a really good week of content for you guys to help get ready for what is going to be a banner final season of a fully intact Mountain West. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Again, please make sure you like and subscribe. With that being said, Tyon, take it away.
We hoop at GCU, man.
Okay, guys, I know you want to get right into those power rankings. We're going to get there in just a sec, but I want to pause to provide some context on the Mountain West Conference. I know GCU's been the WAC for the last few years, and I think we're going to use that data, post-COVID in the WAC and compare that to some of the data with the Mountain West. This is going to give us an idea of just how good the Mountain West Conference is, the test that lies ahead for the Lopes, but also gives us an idea of why GCU wanted to make the change to such a great conference. We are in for a banner year of college basketball. So our first stat here is using average KenPom ranking for last season in the WAC. We're not going to include GCU because obviously GCU can't play themselves. So all of the WAC teams without GCU, the average KenPom ranking was 220. Now, keep in mind, this is out of about 360 to 370 college basketball teams. Obviously, that number fluctuates each year by teams that go D1, but 220 for the WAC last season. What was the Mountain West in that same season last year? 121. So what does that tell us? That tells us that the night in and night out grind in the Mountain West is just going to be a lot tougher. The average game, the average night, the just random Thursday you pull and you turn on a game for the Mountain West is just going to be a lot better, almost about 100 spots on average. Now, that takes care of the average, the night to night, but I want to talk a little bit about kind of the high end, right? The ceiling that the Mountain West has that the WAC did not. So to use that, to look at that, we're going to use how many teams did the WAC have make the NCAA tournament at large in the last 3 years. Now, obviously, at large is a great test for ceiling because at large means you're making the NCAA tournament regardless of if you win your conference tournament, which means you've won a fair share of really good non-conference games, and then you handled your business in conference, usually against pretty good teams, right? You usually got to have a pretty good conference schedule as well. But here's the number for the WAC guys. The last 3 years, that number is 0. And we know GCU's been the WAC representative in the NCAA tournament the last 3 years. Now, GCU was a 12 seed 2 years ago, a team that I don't believe was inside the bubble. And if they would have lost their conference tournament game, would not have made the tournament. But the WAC has just not had teams that, regardless of how they do in Vegas, is going to make it to the NCAA tournament. Now, in those same 3 years, how many Mountain West teams have got an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament? That number is 11. Now, you add in the 3 automatic qualifiers over the last 3 years. Some teams did need to win it to get in, so I do want to, provide that caveat. But that totals 14 teams with 11 qualifiers. So what does this mean? This means that not just the night in and night out grind of the Mountain West is a lot tougher. This also means that throughout your Mountain West Conference schedule, you're going to have, anywhere 5, 6, 7 games that are going to be against pretty much the upper echelon of college basketball. You're going to have to travel to their place. You don't have to schedule a home and home. You're going to have a home and home regardless with some of the top teams in college basketball, especially some of the top mid-major programs. And I think the other thing this means is when it comes to Vegas, obviously GCU has had a ton of success under this regime at their conference tournament, some incredible stories in 2023. They come, as a 5 seed over, I believe, 4 days. And then obviously the last 2 years, they've been a pretty massive favorite and have handled business once they get to Vegas. But this means everything is going to be changed for the conference tournament. Still going to be in Vegas, which is really exciting, but it'll be at the Thomas and Mack Center where UNLV plays. But you have to think, if you're going to win the conference tournament, you are going to have to beat 2 or 3 at least, probably top 60, 75 teams in college basketball. This means if you have one bad 10-minute stretch, potentially one bad 5-minute stretch, your season could be all the way over, just like that. Again, GCU has handled their business. This is, not a bad thing on their end. They've kind of dominated the WAC, right, for the last 4 to 5 years, and that is all credit to them. The Mountain West tournament is going to be a completely different beast. There's going to be fans from other teams selling out the arena, and you're going to have to play some really good basketball consistently over 3 days if you're a Thursday team and 4 days if you're a Wednesday team and you want to make a run from the back of the pack. So that gives us an idea on the average kind of night in, night out, but also tells us quite a bit about, just the pressure that's going to come with those 6 to 7 really tough conference games, as well as what life is going to be like in Vegas. Now, we're not done yet, guys. I want to look and say, how many NCAA tournament wins does the WAC have in the last 3 years? Again, we know that because GCU has dominated the WAC, they are the only person that's been in the NCAA tournament. So we know about the awesome legendary win against St. Mary's. Almost gets another one against Alabama, if you recall, to make it to the Sweet 16. But the WAC just has the one NCAA tournament win in the last 3 years. Now, how many does the Mountain West have in those same 3 years? 9, including a team playing in the NCAA championship game. This tells me that the standard is not just to play good basketball and, maybe you try to catch a break when it comes to March and you get a good matchup, this or that. The Mountain West is a conference of teams that can make the NCAA tournament as an at-large team and that can win not just one, but multiple games consistently in the NCAA tournament. It is a different standard. I think GCU is ready for it. But again, guys, as much as I can say, this is a totally different ball game. And I think if you're a Lopes fan, you got to get really excited that GCU is in this conference. So that being said, you have an idea now of the Mountain West. Let's hop into our rankings. Now, how is this going to work? Guys, I spent some time, I watched some film, did quite a bit of research. Obviously, we know there's a lot of turnover in college sports today, not just college basketball. So a lot of research and a lot of film watching is required to get an idea on some of these guys as, guys change teams. But I spent that time, we did that, and I'm going to rank these teams using a tier system. I think that's most appropriate here to kind of bunch teams together. I think it's going to give you a good idea when you look at some of the matchups and, you get an idea of what the January kind of through March schedule looks like. You could start to kind of circle your calendars for some of those teams. I'm going to go through each team. Each team's going to be featured in this. We're going to talk through, again, some of the players, what's going on with the program. And then with each team, we are going to name a player to keep your eye on or a player to watch. And listen, that's not always necessarily maybe going to be their best player or who is trending to score the most points, but maybe it's an X factor or someone that adds a different dimension to a team. Just a player that if you're a Lope fan, you could keep an eye on this guy come conference schedule time, and then obviously conference tournament week. So we are going to hop in right now, guys. Let's do this. We are going to start at the bottom. And again, as I said, we're going to be doing this in tiers. This is going to be tier 5, and this is a tier with only one single team, and that is Air Force. We know they are an academy school, provides some unique challenges to an athletic department. Obviously, they have a big following, which is really awesome. But when it comes to the product they have put on the hardwood, guys, it has not been good. They haven't won 20 games since 2006. They last made the NCAA tournament in 2007. Their best player last year, Ethan Taylor, he was third team all conference for Mountain West. He led the team in points, rebounds, assists, and steals, which you're saying, okay, that's great. Well, Ethan Taylor graduated, so they are not bringing back a whole lot. They bring some guys in. I looked up some of the names. I'm not super excited, guys, about anybody they brought in. This will not be a great college basketball team this season. And unfortunately, I don't even have a guy to watch for or keep your eye on. Again, I went through the roster, tried to find something, couldn't find that guy. This will be unfortunately a pretty bad basketball team, probably one of the 40 to 50 worst college basketball teams in the nation. And it is a team that, if you're an average Mountain West team, you have got to go 2-0, no questions asked. I would be shocked if they were to win more than 3 games this year in the Mountain West. So that is Tier 5 with Air Force by themselves. So this takes us to Tier 4. Things change a little bit here. And how I would kind of word this is these are teams that when you host them at home, you're probably going to be if you're one of the better teams in the Mountain West, let's just say GCU, you're probably going to be about a double-digit favorite at home. And, you have to handle business. The math just gets really hard if you do not win these games at home against the Tier 4 teams. And then when you go on the road, you got to be careful. These are going to be kind of 3 places that won't have really crazy fans or, kind of a wild environment, similar environments to maybe some of the things going on in the WAC. Not a lot of fans, not a lot of noise, and you got to make sure you are focused, dialed in. These are games you have to win. I think home and away, set the expectation and be ready to go. Obviously, one of these teams is going to be one that GCU opens up against, and I think provides a unique challenge as well, just from a travel and logistical perspective. But we are not going to start there. We are going to start at the bottom of this tier for me is Fresno State, another program that finds itself in a super tough spot in the Mountain West. They've had some stuff going on to the program. I would encourage you to Google that. But we're going to kind of keep this on track here. And to me, this is the clear weak link amongst the 5 teams that are leaving to go to the Pac-12. Fresno State, to me, clearly sticks out as a team basketball wise that just does not have a lot of momentum going for it right now. And like we said, they were under investigation for a betting scandal. Won't go into the details of that, but guys, Paul George is not walking through that door. They have not made the NCAA tournament anytime recently, and they have not had a ton of momentum going on there in Fresno. They do have a pretty good following. We know football there is really big, and they invest quite a bit there, and they've been kind of frisky on the field, but on the court, they just have not had a lot of things go their way. I do have a name for you to kind of keep your eye on, and that is Zayon Collins. For him, we're going to keep it kind of strictly with encore commentary. He's going to be the name to watch. He's 12-4-4 last year. So, he did have some good stats. Again, not super efficient, kind of one of those guards that, plays on not a great team, isn't necessarily, super efficient. He reminds me, watching the film, a lot of kind of a poor man's Jalen House. If you remember, he played at New Mexico, kind of a legendary player over there in Albuquerque. But, he's quick, he's shifty, he's speedy. And, this is a guy you're going to have to watch, undoubtedly, when you're playing against him. Could kind of spook you on the wrong night. If he gets hot, he shoots well, he makes a 3 or 2, can completely flip a game. He's a guy who plays with a ton of energy. And so the name to watch for Fresno is Zayon Collins, but they do find themselves for me in Tier 4. Next up is San Jose State. They weren't particularly great last year, but man, they had an absolutely brutal offseason. First, their leading scorer graduates. He goes to the pros, so he is gone. And this is the worst news of the 2, in my opinion. They have a promising sharpshooter, Latrell Davis. He's a sophomore. You got to get pretty excited about him, but he enters the portal, which you're saying, guys do that all the time. Even if he goes another place, you try to rebuild or whatever, but he enters the portal and goes down to San Diego State in conference, goes to, maybe the best program in the conference and transfers down there. So really a brutal hit there for the San Jose State Spartans. They brought some scoring in via the portal, undoubtedly, but much like last year, I looked at the roster last year and this year, they just don't have a ton of size. And, we're going to talk about this throughout these teams here in the Mountain West. You have got to have size to compete. They brought in some scoring, as I mentioned. The name I'm going to go with, I want you guys to keep your eye on, is Javon Hanna, kind of a bigger, bulkier, stronger guard. The jumper, doesn't look great, but he's got some incredible athleticism. And another one of those guys similar to Zayon Collins on Fresno State. To me, you're going to have to keep an eye on him. He can flip a game. He starts feeling it. He gets one big dunk. He's going to be all over the place. He's going to, work his butt off. But to me, this San Jose State team, I would be very, very, very shocked if they were even to get up around 500 in conference play. I would assume they'd be a few games under 500 in Mountain West Conference play. Next up, and the last team in Tier 4 is going to be the Wyoming Cowboys. Mark Rogers' old home where he used to coach. So, and listen, if you're a Lopes fan, you shouldn't just be familiar with Wyoming because of Mark Rogers coaching there. GCU actually played Wyoming home and home 2022, 2023. And oddly enough, Wyoming came to GCU Arena and won. And then GCU returned the favor and went to Wyoming, went to Laramie, and won on the road. So they split the series in 22 and 23. But if you remember that 2022 team, they were really good. They made the NCAA tournament. They built the team around Graham Ike, really good lefty, big guy who's now at Gonzaga, a ton of talent. They had some other guys that were really good. Wyoming has had some success more recently. I think to me, that's why I have them as the highest ranked team in this tier. But I still don't see a ton going on the roster. They were able to keep some guys internally, which I think is really important for the development and keeping somewhat of a core together in a conference where, you're going to have continuity to win. That's just the bottom line. So I do have them, like I said, at the top of this tier, Tier 4. My guy to watch, they bring in Caden Bennett. He transfers in. And again, another classic kind of volume, kind of guy who can fill it up. Maybe is not going to be the head of efficiency, but a guy who on the wrong night, depending on what team you're a fan of, on the wrong night can catch you off guard and can give you some buckets. So Caden Bennett, keep an eye on that name for Wyoming. But they round out our Tier 4. And now we're going to really transition. This thing's going to change quite a bit here. I think Tier 5 and Tier 4, these are teams, you're going to probably beat up on if you're a better team. And things kind of change. I have in this Tier 3, 5 teams, count them 5. And this is, again, like I said, things change here. Better venues, tougher places to travel, really good fan bases, tough environments, really good coaching. You're going to start to see the coaching. These are really, well-established, talented coaches that have had success in the past. And these are just going to be battles. These are games where, at home, you're going to want to win these because guess what? That return trip to any of these teams is going to be super, super tough. Great fans, tough coaching, some elevation throughout this tier as well. So just going to be really tough road games. At the bottom of this tier, Tier 3 of 5 teams, I have the Nevada Wolfpack. So they had a little bit of a disappointing season last year, without a doubt. Before last year, they had made the NCAA tournament the 2 years before, had some momentum, had some success under Steve Alford, obviously a great college basketball coach. Last season didn't go great. There's an article out there about some issues they had off the court in the locker room, which were not good. So I think some of that stuff, again, you get a year to kind of refresh the roster. It sounds like some of that stuff has been figured out. But with that, they lose Kobe Sanders, really, really talented player. He got some G League run, really talented guy. And then they also lose Nick Davidson, easily their 2 best players last year, who Nick Davidson enters the portal, ends up at Clemson. But they did rebuild. And I want to call out one guy here, and a GCU Lope is going to be super familiar with him. And his name is Joel Armotrading. And I've worked on that pronunciation, and I hope I got it right, guys. Caleb Smith's former teammate at UC Riverside last year. This is a big guy. We mentioned earlier, you're going to have size to compete in the Mountain West, without a doubt. This guy provides that size. He is big, and I think he's kind of a little unpolished, but he has the ability to be really special. 6'6" last year, but he does kind of move well. You can see the potential with him. Potential breakout guy in the Mountain West for me is Joel Armotrading with the Nevada Wolfpack. And I think, when you go to play Nevada, if you don't have a big guy that can bang and work their butts off down low, he could be a guy who could flip a game. And that's why they have a much higher floor, in my opinion. They've got some talent around him as well, a really good coach, tough place to play, and a potential breakout big guy. I have the Nevada Wolfpack at the bottom of tier 3. Next up here is our friends here in Lopeland to the east, the New Mexico Lobos. And again, this is where it's going to get maybe a little controversial. So everyone stick with me here. I have them as the second team from the bottom in tier 3, a program that took a big hit last year. Obviously, Lil Patino, as I call him, leaves and goes to Xavier. Obviously, Donovan Dent, one of the best, not just mid-major, but best college basketball players in the nation last year, goes home to UCLA and joins the Bruins. So it's a full refresh for them. There was a little bit of worry what's going to go on here, but they bring in a really good coach, Eric Olin from UCSD, last year's college basketball darling, a guy who's a little bit of an offensive guru and a genius and had a ton of success last year. They play quick, they play unique, and if you're not ready to run up and down the court, they're going to score 100 on you pretty easily. He did bring in quite a bit of talent. I'm, very, very intrigued to see how some of that gets pieced together. They've got some really interesting international prospects that came in, similar to Evan Bodor for the Lopes. They had some international prospects playing in some of those U20, U19 tournaments that seemed to be pretty good. But the guy I'm keeping my eye on here for the New Mexico Lobos who could pop is Kevin Patton Jr. Had some serious pedigree out of high school. He's bounced around a little bit, finds himself at New Mexico. We've talked about this with some of the guys on the Lopes roster. What an opportunity to refresh, change of scenery, and just kind of start over. This guy, to me, checks all the boxes. A guy that could restart his career at the Lobos and really kind of pop and play well. He's a bigger guard, and I think he could be a really good player for the Lobos this year. Again, this is where things really change. The Lobos have quite a bit of talent. They have a good coach, obviously a legendary arena they play in the pit, great fans. And we're going to just see a lot of this is going to be new. And I have them second from the bottom in tier 3. Next up, I have the Colorado State Rams, another team that is leaving for the Pac-12 at the end of the season. Their old coach, Nico Medved, goes back home to Minnesota. So they are also pressing the restart button, but they can do it internally, which I think gives them quite a bit of leg up. They turn the keys over to NCAA tournament legend Ali Farokhmanesh, if you remember, took a 3 when he wasn't supposed to take a 3 and hit it and won that tournament game for Northern Iowa. A legend. He's been coaching since he stopped playing, and he's been on the Colorado State staff. Head coach leaves, and he just steps right into the job. That's kind of one of the main reasons I have them where I have them here. Maybe a little bit higher than others, but I just think you get the holdover on culture. They do keep some guys within the team as well. Don't go to the portal. But, you got to talk about, there's two big things here you got to talk about. One is they lose Nick Clifford, the 24th pick in the NBA draft this last summer, became, really draft scout darling, had that crazy 8-game stretch towards the end of the season where Colorado State was playing incredible. They lose on the buzzer beater to Maryland, the team GCU lost to in the tournament. Next to Nick Clifford, they had Jalen Lake, who is a total program guy. Loved his time there in Colorado State. In the presser after their tournament game, they lost. There were tears. So you lose a big guy there. But again, they bring in a little bit of production. They keep some guys internal. You keep some of the staff. That has me a little more optimistic for what they've got going on. And my one guy for the Colorado State Rams is probably not a guy anyone else is going to pick. I'm going with Jace Butler. He is a lefty guard. He was pretty highly recruited out of high school, very highly rated by all the different networks. But he ended up at Washington as a true freshman, a weird situation up there. He enters the portal. He commits early. I like when a guy commits early. That means, he's decisive. He's ready to go, similar to Dusty Stromer did for the Lopes. Commits, he's in, let's go, let's get to work. I don't need to deal with any of the other BS, NIL deals, any of that. And he's a smooth lefty guard, as I said. And I think a guy that could pop, another change of scenery guy. That's going to be a common theme throughout the podcast, just because there is so much change going on in this conference. But I have Colorado State here in the middle of tier 3. Next up, and everyone, take a collective breath. I have in this tier, second to the top, the Grand Canyon University Antelopes. No need to panic here. I feel this is a very good, comfy spot. I like the ceiling of this team. I would say I like the ceiling of this team the most out of any team in this tier. A ton of talent that they bring in. Obviously, they don't return pretty much any production. They lose about 90% of it. The guys who graduate go to the portal. They've got to replace it. They not just replace it, they bring in a ton of really good talent, a ton of depth, a ton of size. You look at guys like Caleb Smith, 6'10", seems to still be growing. F.A. Demerol out of Turkey comes in. Dennis Evans seems to be healthy. I love everything about this team, the depth. We're going to see on the shooting. I think that's the big question mark. Who's going to step up and provide that shooting for the Lopes? But what's kind of the big question for me, or concern might be too big of a word. I don't think it's a concern, but the big question is, how does this drink get mixed? Bryce Drew has done it every year for the last 3 years, for the last 5 years, making it work. This is going to be his toughest challenge yet, the night in, night out grind of the Mountain West. Again, he's proved to do it, but one big thing you forget, he's had some turnover on the staff. So there's some rebuild there, and then a ton of turnover on the roster. Getting all that to gel, I think this team, for me, I would have them rated a lot higher when it comes to the conference tournament. Bryce knows how to get it done in Vegas. There's no questions about that. As I mentioned, a different beast when it comes to the Mountain West Conference tournament. When it comes to the night in, night out grind, I would say I'm just slightly more pessimistic than their ability to win the conference tournament, which I believe I'd have them ranked quite a bit higher to do that. So we'll see how this works out. I'm excited to see this team kind of gel and just kind of come together. And my guy to watch for the Lopes, I'm going Nana Owusu-Anane. I think this one's pretty easy. 14-9 at Brown 2 years ago. I was going to say a year and a half, but 2 years ago. Sits out all last season with an injury. He's a veteran. He, clearly seems to be a leader based on stuff we've seen this summer. It seems to be locked in. He is incredibly focused, and I love what he brings on the defensive end of the floor. When it comes to the counting stats, we'll see if he's able to kind of get the points and rebounds, but this is a guy who, spoiler alert, I'm going to have on my Mountain West Conference teams when we have that podcast later this week, but that's my guy to keep an eye on. I'm excited to see what he's added to his game, and very bullish on this team. First year in the conference, you got to think, just a complete change of scenery for them, but a coach who's proven to get it done and a ton of talent has me really excited for the Lopes. I have them second to highest in this tier 3, 5th overall in the Mountain West. Now, my final team in this tier, and this is going to be kind of controversial. I spent a lot of time going through the roster, watching some clips, and again, going to be a little controversial, but I actually have the Rebels of UNLV here at the top of tier 3. They bring in Josh Pastner, obviously, college basketball legend. We can all remember the mask he wore over his face, the face shield, coaching that was legendary. But this is a program that, we can face it. They bring up their history more often or their older history more than their recent history. And that's because they used to be awesome. They used to be great. They haven't been very great recently. I actually spoke with Mike Cooper of Scarlet Standard Media, who told me, and I believe this is correct, it's either 7 or 8 years straight they have not won a Mountain West tournament game. Keep in mind, it's in their own arena at home. They have not won a Mountain West tournament game against a team that isn't Air Force in the last 8 years. That is astonishing. I do think that will change this year. This team has a lot of talent. Again, they rebuild, bringing in a new coach, kind of bringing in just a breath of fresh air to the program, a kind of recommitment, reinvestment. As we know, especially Las Vegas now, not taboo anymore for sports. Very normal. I think kind of that cloud's not over their head anymore. And they've got quite a bit of talent, in my opinion. Now, the guy I'm not going with, but I do want to mention, is Kamani Hamilton from High Point. He comes over as an all Big South player, some serious pedigree there. But my guy to watch, to me, is actually Al Green from Louisiana Tech. You remember the Lopes played Louisiana Tech last year and lost to them at their place. You're probably confused because he only had 5 points against the Lopes. But over his last 10 games of the year, He averaged 14 points a game, really came on for them at the end. A lefty, kind of slick guard, a really good player, and he popped quite a bit down the stretch last year. Could see him, another change of scenery and a new system and a good coach. I think he's a guy who could pop. I think they have a lot of talent. And, we'll just see how this all plays out. One thing I want to mention, they do have some injuries they've dealt with in the offseason. That could affect things. Everything I've heard and read is that they're going to be ready to go kind of around the time the season starts, which means by Mountain Conference play, they should be 100% ready to go. Everyone healthy, rocking and rolling. A ton of talent up there in Vegas. We'll see how Pastner pieces it together. Similar to the Lopes, the big question is, how do they mix this thing and make it go? Okay, this for me is where things really change. We're going to head to tier 2, and I've got 2 teams in here, and these are both teams that are just not going to be super bothered by tough travel, tough games, tough environments, national TV games. They've been there, done that. Really good coaches that have a certain standard of excellence, programs that have a standard of excellence. And we're going to start off with, for me, it's Boise State in this tier 2, the bottom team. And I know the first thing to do here is say, hey, they lost Dagenhart. He was kind of their ultimate program guy. Was there for a bit, developed, and by the end, all that offense was running through him. Really dynamic player. So it's easy to just kind of write them off, right? But they have a lot going on, I think, still, and they've shown the ability to develop guys internally. They've got a few guys that are super good. And to me, that's the key to a good mid-major program, to not just raise your floor, but I think it raises your ceiling when you can keep players in-house, develop them, have the continuity, have a core. You go into tough games and this guy's going to cut back door, this guy's going this way. You just see a super connected team, and I think they're ready. You look at a guy like Andrew Meadow, might be your dark horse for Mountain West Player of the Year if you were a betting individual. Really, really good player there. And then you got analytics darling RJ Keene, the guy who hates stats. He's notorious for not getting any counting stats, but knowing how to win games. You add in a coach like Leon Rice, who, again, just has a level of consistency and a high floor with this team. And I think they're lined up to do really well this year in the Mountain West. Now, my one guy to keep an eye on for them, I think, was the most under the radar transfer in the Mountain West. Nobody's talking about him, and that is Dylan Andrews from UCLA. Spent some time on some really good UCLA teams, played for them, obviously was up and down at different moments. But again, we mentioned Dagenhart leaving. That's a big deal. But you bring in kind of a guy who can handle the ball, can run your offense, can play make, can distribute in Dylan Andrews. And you kind of just, that void is not going to be missed as much with Dagenhart gone. He can fill in. Like I said, run your offense, get the ball to guys in the spots they needed to, control the game, get up and down the floor. And he has a ton of experience in really, really big games, having played for UCLA. And he had a little bit of success there. And so I think that's the most underrated transfer, the guy not being talked about in the Mountain West right now. And this is a really good team. They brought in an incredible big guy as well, I think, who's super versatile. And this is a really good team, the Boise State Broncos. I think they're an at-large team. This is my line where, I think they're above the line for an at-large bid. Really good bet to win the Mountain West and just has a ton of talent. So Boise State, my first and bottom team here in Tier 2. Next up in Tier 2, I have Utah State. There's a lot to like with, not just the team, but the program. And I think the first thing you got to call out is the environment. I haven't been there yet, but I've heard some incredible things. The fans are great. The students are awesome. It is loud. It is unique and a really tough place to play. And they just do not lose a whole lot there. I think in, today's nomadic world of college basketball, this level of competency that they have, it's really admirable. They've had a rotating cast of coaches, a rotating cast of players. And how about this for a stat, guys? Throughout all that, they've just made 5 of the last 7 NCAA tournaments. That's all they've done. Tough place to play. Really good coach who's back for year 2, Jared Calhoun, and a lot to be excited about, I think, if you're the Aggies. One thing to call out, not my guy to watch here, but Drake Allen, name probably sounds familiar. Spent some time in the WAC with Southern Utah and Utah Valley. He's kind of developed into a real bona fide guy. And he'll be playing for them. He'll be probably scoring in double digits. Really good player there, but that is not my guy who I am calling out here. This one is super easy for Utah State. To me, listen, I think this guy is going to be your Mountain West Player of the Year. Mason Falsev, he was 15, 6, and 4 last year on above average splits shooting wise. I want to be clear. The free throws were bad, guys. He shot 58% from the free throw line. Super weird. I have no idea why, he didn't shoot well the year before. He was in the 60s. So room to grow there if he can start shooting free throws better. He could easily get up to 20 points this year. He can distribute the ball. He rebounds. He's just a super active guy, really, really good player. And when you talk about guys, I know I've mentioned guys popping a lot, right, and getting better. It's these guys who stick with the program, stick with the coach, and they develop, they put time in the off season, they provide consistency in all of the environment or all the little environmental factors around them. And Mason Falsev has done that. He stays, he's in year 3. You get another year of training, another off season, hitting the weight room. And year 3 is usually when guys pop. You can talk about guys like Donovan Dent, Neat Clifford, etc. Really good team here, guys. They might have the best just kind of individual talent, individual player, Mason Falsev. And I have them as the highest team in tier 2. Okay, that leaves us the team, obviously, we don't have to explain this. San Diego State in a tier 1. I think this is something where I have to have them in a tier by themselves. Boise State, Utah State, really good. To me, San Diego State's in kind of a little bit of their own space here when it comes to the Mountain West. They have incredible pedigree. So we talked about just when we get to this level here, right, in the power rankings, these are teams that just have a standard. And they usually meet it. They usually exceed it. And they know what to do to win and get it done. Same thing as kind of Utah State. They've had some variables, some stuff going on around the program. Obviously, they make the big run to the NCAA championship game. And, those are lofty expectations after you make it there. They've continued to push this thing forward. They continue to invest. They had guys enter the portal this last year. One could have gone to the NBA. One guy would have been maybe one of the 5 most coveted guys in the portal. Those 2 both come back. You add in Brian Dutcher, a really good coach. Also just what seems to be really one of the great guys, one of the gems in college basketball. Honest interview, no excuses, no BS kind of guy. He schedules tough and non-conference so that this team's prepared. And I think it's a really good coach. You add in just Viejas and how tough it is to play there. I know GCU fans had some success against them. I would not kind of bet on that or kind of rely on that and go into these games like, oh, we've beat SDSU before, no big deal. We can handle them now. Sure. This team is really, really good. When we start to talk personnel, it's a long list of guys. It starts with, these aren't even my 1 guys to watch. Miles Bird obviously comes back, tested the NBA draft waters, comes back, had some struggles shooting the ball. Maybe some of that gets figured out. All Mountain West sort of player there. Magoon Guath, one of the best defensive Swiss Army knife kind of guys in the country. Throwing out a name like Anthony Davis is super ridiculous. So I hate even doing that. But a guy who just kind of blocks shots, steals, he's kind of everywhere. He's around the rim. He's, he can handle the ball a little bit. He's just a do everything guy. And that was just in his first year of college basketball last season, was the freshman of the year, defensive player of the year. I've heard rumors, even though he dealt with a little bit of an injury this offseason, that he's gained 15, 20 pounds of muscle. That's a terrifying thought. Reese Waters comes back from injury. He was out all last season. Another Mountain West Conference sort of player. And then you look at a guy like, we mentioned earlier, Latrell Davis from San Jose State comes and joins San Diego State, an interconference transfer. Those are always juicy. We know that as Lopes fans with Mekhi Williams, kind of the intensity it brings to some of those games. And now we get to my guy who I think is an X factor. Lopes fans, you're going to be familiar with him. Another Louisiana Tech guy, Sean Newman Jr., a point guard, true kind of old school sort of point guard, 25 points and 9 assists against the Lopes last year when GCU traveled to Louisiana Tech, controlled that whole game from start to finish. I don't want to say that game was never in doubt, but it was just like they never panicked. They've had their true point guard. And he just took care of business that night. It was an incredible kind of artistry to watch. Now he's coming to the Mountain West, going to be tougher competition. This team's got a lot of depth, so he's going to really have to fight for it. But to me, in my opinion, San Diego State defensively, they're going to be a top 10, 12 defense in the country. Just lock it in. So that's there. Every time you play them, it's going to be almost impossible to score. But they can get some stuff going offensively. I think Sean Newman could be that guy, bring some life to that offense, get the ball to guys in the right spots, handle the ball, control the pace of the game. All that's going to go through him. And if Dutcher has his guy there as a true point guard, this team makes so much sense. Miles Bird, he can play off the ball a little bit. All these other guys can get involved. And this is a really, really good deep team. I don't want to kind of speak in hyperbole here. To me, this team doesn't have a ceiling. I think this team's really good. I think they're underrated in a lot of rankings. This is really good news for other Mountain West teams. If you're a Lopes fan, this is really good news. To me, you're going to be able to get to play what I think is a top 25 team. We'll see how some of that shakes out. But San Diego State, to me, kind of in its own tier 1 here with the Mountain West. And I think we got to just say it kind of goes through them, especially you play in an NCAA championship game. To me, that just kind of sets the tone for the conference. Yes, that's a few years ago, but to me, they kind of set the pace for this conference. Everyone's going to be coming for their spot. They're going to play some really tough non-conference games, and this is going to give the rest of the Mountain West a really good opportunity to get a really good resume building win. So we'll see how some of that shakes out. We'll see how Magungwa's injury is looking, and if he's going to be ready to go right out of the gate, 100%, no questions asked. We'll see there. But those are our rankings, guys. And I think, again, really good basketball conference, really excited for that, and a lot to look forward to if you're a Lopes fan. With that being said, we're going to start from the bottom, and we're going to recap this thing. We have at 12 at the bottom, in a tier all on its own, we have Air Force. I think in a clear line in the sand, we've got 3 teams after them, Air Force on the bottom by themselves. We go Fresno State, San Jose State, and then Wyoming. Another kind of clear line, a clear break there. To me, we head to tier 3. We've got Nevada, and then we've got New Mexico, the Lobos. After that, we've got the Colorado State Rams with Ali Farokhmanesh at the helm. Next up, we've got the Lopes. Again, a team I think has a higher ceiling, especially once we get conference tournament time. A team I really like. I think I would have them higher. Just the continuity is the big question mark there. At the top of that tier 3, I have the UNLV Runnin' Rebels. And then we have a tier 2 that features Boise State and Utah State. And then we round it out with San Diego State. So again, a lot to look forward to. If you're a college basketball fan, if you're a GCU fan, a lot to keep your eyes on. We're going to talk a little bit about that on Wednesday with Blake, some of the non-conference games where these teams in GCU's conference are going to go out and try to build these resumes, and the GCU is going to try to beat up on them once we get to conference play. So we appreciate you guys tuning into everything over here at Go Lopes Radio. During Mountain West Week, GCU makes this move. It's a really exciting time in college basketball, a really exciting time if you are a GCU basketball fan. So appreciate you guys. Cheers.